Imagine unlocking healthcare secrets,
Hmm.
hidden right there in the data, speeding up breakthroughs, uh, getting treatments designed just for you, catching diseases way earlier. Sounds pretty amazing, right?
It really does. Transformative is the word.
Today on the Deep Dive, we're digging into the sources you shared with us, exploring how artificial intelligence is, well, making that future seem much closer. It's fundamentally changing medical research and healthcare delivery.
That's right. And these sources, they give us a really detailed picture. We're seeing these revolutionary applications of AI, the just unprecedented scale of data it uses, and also the really crucial conversations we need to have.
Yeah, the challenges around ethics, privacy, regulation, all that comes with using such powerful tools, especially in health.
Exactly. So our mission today is to kind of unpack the key insights from all this material. What's actually happening now? What can we do that we couldn't before?
And maybe most importantly, what are the guardrails we need as this tech becomes, well, more integrated into medicine? Let's dive in. All right, let's start with the basics. When we talk about AI in medicine today, what are we really talking about? We hear AI, machine learning, deep learning. What's the core idea here?
Well, at its heart, AI in this context is about making machines capable of tasks that normally require human intelligence. Things like learning, adapting, maybe making decisions.
Okay.
But the real engines driving the change right now, especially in research and patient care, are machine learning, ML, and its subset, deep learning.
Right, and these concepts aren't brand new, but the sources really highlight why they're taking off now. Seems like two big things, processing power and data.
Exactly. Huge leaps in processing, like GPUs, that's one factor. But maybe even more critical is just the sheer amount of data we have now.
Hmm.
And healthcare data isn't just big, it's uniquely complex. People often talk about the 5 Vs.
Right, the 5 Vs. Let's unpack that.
So you've got volume, just massive amounts, petabytes of really complex info, then velocity data pouring in constantly, from monitors, tests, notes, nonstop. Then variety is huge structured stuff like lab results, but also unstructured notes, images, genomic data, data from your smartwatch, incredibly diverse.
Okay, that's three.
Then veracity, how accurate and reliable is that data? It can vary a lot. And finally, value, how do you turn all this mess into something actually useful?
That sheer scale and variety, it really is beyond what any person or even team of people could fully grasp.
Absolutely. It's why AI-driven analytics aren't just like a nice bonus anymore. They're becoming essential to find the patterns hidden in all that complexity.
So, based on the sources, where is AI making the biggest waves right now?
It's really touching almost every stage, from the very basic research all the way to patient care. Let's maybe start with research and publishing itself.
Okay, how is it changing that?
Well, AI is starting to act almost like a sophisticated research assistant.
Assisting with writing, you mean?
Mm.
Like suggesting edits or draft detection?
Exactly that. Helping draft text, suggesting grammar or style improvements, using large language models, LLMs, to basically enhance manuscript quality before it even goes out.
Interesting. And beyond just the writing part.
Oh, yeah. It's fundamentally changing data analysis within research, helping optimize study outcomes in specific fields. Obstetrics was mentioned, and pharmaceuticals too, speeding up discovery.
Right.
And the sources also point out how it's streamlining the whole publishing process, helping with peer review, quality control, even matching manuscripts to the best fit journals.
So, helping researchers work smarter, get findings out faster. How does that translate more directly to patients? Diagnosis, prognosis, those seem like areas ripe for AI.
They are huge areas. Think about medical imaging, for instance.
Right.
Clinicians face just an overwhelming amount of visual data. Interpreting something like a cardiac ultrasound, it's incredibly complex, even for experts. AI is stepping in there to help.
So it's not necessarily replacing the radiologist, but maybe acting like a second pair of eyes, flagging things.
Exactly. It aids interpretation, can speed up the workflow, potentially lower costs, and even help manage population health by spotting trends across lots of images. It can identify disease directly from the data or predict the chance someone might develop something.
Are there any specific examples in the sources that really jumped out at you?
Yeah, the one about remote monitoring for heart failure patients was uh, really compelling.
How does that work?
AI systems analyze data from sensors, things like breathing rate, heart rate, subtle changes in posture, skin temp, activity levels.
Stuff you might not even notice day to day.
Right. And based on these patterns, the AI can predict if a patient's health is starting to decline, sometimes weeks before they typically end up needing emergency hospitalization.
Weeks. Wow, that's
Yeah, weeks. That kind of early warning system, it's genuinely transformative for managing a chronic condition like heart failure.
That really shifts the whole model from reactive to proactive care, doesn't it?
Yeah,
What about in cancer? Another huge area.
absolutely. AI is showing incredible promise there too. In detection, for example. By analyzing images or maybe genetic data, it can often identify tumors earlier, sometimes more accurately than traditional methods alone.
Helping reduce human error in interpretation, maybe?
That seems to be a key benefit, yes. Reducing potential errors.
So we've got research, diagnosis. What about actually finding new treatments? Drug development is notoriously slow and, well, expensive.
And that's another area where AI is really poised to make a massive difference, especially with the push towards more personalized medicine.
Personalized, meaning tailored to the individual.
Exactly. The sources talk about AI enhancing efficiency in clinical trials, but also, more fundamentally, helping design completely new drug molecules.
How can AI design a molecule?
Well, it uses something called structure-based design. It crunches through enormous databases of known molecular structures and biological targets.
Okay.
And it can then predict how potential new drug compounds might interact with those targets, all in silico, meaning computationally.
So it tests millions of ideas virtually.
Pretty much. It lets researchers evaluate a vast number of possibilities very quickly, identifying the most promising candidates that would take, years or just be impossible to test in a traditional lab setting.
That sounds incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And it connects directly to precision medicine, I imagine.
Absolutely. Precision medicine is really the goal here. Tailoring healthcare treatments, prevention, advice to your unique biology, your genetics, physiology, lifestyle, environment.
All those different factors.
Right, and AI is the engine that can actually process all that diverse information.
Because it can handle the sheer variety and volume we talked about earlier.
Precisely. It integrates and analyzes clinical records, genomics, metabolomics, imaging, wearable data, all of it. It finds connections across these data types that humans just can't see.
Allowing for what? Truly personalized diagnostics.
Yes, personalized diagnostics, targeted therapies, optimizing drug doses, even specific lifestyle recommendations tailored to you. It's about using AI to design specific health pathways by bringing together the life sciences and technology.
The sources also mentioned genomic medicine specifically. How is AI helping us make sense of our DNA?
Well, since the Human Genome Project finished, we've been basically swimming in genomic data. Making sense of it is the challenge.
Right.
AI, especially machine learning models trained on these huge genome datasets, is becoming essential. It helps interpret what genetic alterations mean, how diversity affects basic cell processes, things like DNA repair or metabolism.
Are there companies focused on this?
Yeah, the sources mention Deep Genomics as one example, using ML to understand how genetic variations link to disease.
And what about actually editing genomes? Tools like CRISPR?
AI and ML are playing a crucial role there too. They help refine those technologies, making them more efficient and accurate.
How? By predicting outcomes.
Exactly. Predicting how well an edit might work, what specific changes it will cause, and really importantly, predicting potential unintended off-target effects.
Which is critical for safety.
Absolutely critical. This kind of prediction helps speed up the development of safer, more precise gene therapies, and also helps create better experimental models for studying diseases.
It's clear AI's reach is incredibly broad. Did the sources highlight any specific disease areas where it's making particularly big strides?
Cardiology definitely stood out. Beyond just the imaging interpretation we mentioned, ML algorithms are now being used to detect congestive heart failure just from chest x-rays, automating really complex measurements in echocardiograms, and predicting overall cardiovascular risk.
Predicting risk is one thing, but actual events.
Yes, that was striking. Deep learning models predicting specific acute events, like an in-hospital cardiac arrest, apparently with better accuracy than previous established methods.
Right.
And they're also proving highly accurate at spotting complex arrhythmias from ECG data, which can be tricky.
Predicting a potential cardiac arrest. That's a very direct, potentially life-saving impact.
Huge impact. Cancer, as we touched on, is another major focus. ML algorithms are being used for detection, prognosis, and even predicting how a patient might respond to certain drugs based on complex multi-omics data.
Multi-omics, meaning integrating different types of biological data.
Exactly. Genomics, proteomics, metabolomics, etc. The sources mentioned a key development is the FDA starting to approve drugs based on a tumor's genetic profile, not just where it originated in the body. AI's ability to analyze that complex data enables that shift.
Right.
And there are specific examples too, like using ML to detect multiple myeloma or to refine survival predictions for breast cancer patients.
So cardiology and cancer are big ones, but the underlying principle applies more broadly.
Yes, the sources suggest that while these fields get a lot of attention, the ability of machine learning to find these really intricate patterns in complex biological data makes it practical for diagnosing and understanding many other human diseases, especially as we get more detailed genomic and proteomic information.
Okay, so we've painted this picture of, frankly, incredible potential: faster research, personalized treatments, earlier detection. Amazing stuff. But using this kind of power, especially with data that's so incredibly sensitive, like our health information, that must bring some major complexities, right?
It absolutely does. The sources are very clear on this. Harnessing all this digital data is the key, yes, but it definitely introduces significant challenges we have to navigate carefully.
Like what specifically?
Well, things like data security, obviously,
Right.
privacy, and making sure these powerful tools are actually fair and trustworthy.
Let's dig into those. What are some of the core challenges the sources highlight around the data itself?
One really big point is where the training data comes from. A lot of it is derived from electronic health records, EHRs.
Okay, and what's the issue there?
Well, the sources point out that EHR data can sometimes inadvertently reflect the demographics of populations who've historically had better access to formal healthcare.
So the data might not fully represent everyone.
Potentially, yes.
Huh.
And that can affect the AI.
How so?
It means that AI models might get really good at spotting patterns common in those well-represented groups, but maybe less sensitive or even less accurate when used with data from socioeconomic minorities or other groups who aren't as heavily represented in the initial training data.
So it's not like the AI is intentionally biased, but it reflects the bias in the data it learned from.
Exactly. It's a reflection of the input. We've seen this outside medicine too, right? Like those recruitment tools that showed bias because they were trained on historical hiring data.
Right.
In healthcare, this could mean, for example, an AI might pick up subtle signs of a condition more reliably in one group than another. Or maybe it recommends a treatment that worked well historically for a certain group but isn't necessarily optimal for someone else, not because of clinical need, but because their data patterns weren't as dominant in the training set.
So getting that training data right, making sure it's representative and inclusive, is absolutely fundamental for building AI that works fairly for everyone.
It's a massive challenge, and a critical one for building robust and equitable AI in healthcare. Beyond that, there are also tricky questions about, like, who owns the intellectual property when AI helps write a research paper?
Okay, that's the data representation side. What about just keeping all this sensitive health information private and secure?
That's paramount, obviously. These huge repositories of health data needed for AI are, unfortunately, prime targets for security breaches.
Right.
There's a real concern about sensitive health info being potentially re-identified or shared without proper consent, especially when data gets aggregated or moved to cloud servers for the heavy-duty processing AI requires.
And the fact that laws differ globally must make it even harder.
Hugely complex. You've got GDPR in Europe, HIPAA in the US, other laws elsewhere. They all treat health information differently. So when you need diverse data, maybe from multiple continents, to build AI that actually works well for different populations, trying to share and use that data legally and securely across borders is a major hurdle. It can create loopholes if you're not incredibly careful.
And the healthcare systems themselves can be vulnerable.
Definitely. Digital health infrastructure is a target. The sources mentioned a real-world example, that cyber attack on AIIMS in India.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about that.
It crippled a major hospital system, affected patient care directly, and potentially compromised a lot of patient data. It shows the real-world risks.
So given these big privacy and security worries, are researchers using AI itself to try and solve some of these problems?
Fortunately, yes. That's one of the interesting developments. AI techniques are actually being used to help protect privacy. One approach getting attention is called federated learning.
Federated learning, how does that work?
Okay, so instead of pulling all the sensitive patient data into one central place to train the AI model.
Which creates that big risky data pool.
Exactly. Instead, the AI model itself is sent out to where the data already lives, maybe different hospitals or research institutions. The model then learns locally just on that specific institution's data. Then, Only the updates to the model, like the parameters it learned, not the actual patient data, are sent back to a central server and combined to improve the overall global model.
So the sensitive data never actually leaves the hospital or clinic.
Precisely. The learning kind of travels to the data rather than the other way around. It significantly helps maintain confidentiality, especially when dealing with data across borders with different privacy laws.
That's a pretty clever solution. Are
Yeah.
there others?
Yeah, other techniques mentioned include differential privacy that involves adding carefully calibrated mathematical noise to data sets. It obscures individual patient details while still allowing researchers to see overall trends.
Okay.
And various cryptographic techniques can be used to encrypt data during the training or testing phases. Often, researchers are looking at hybrid methods, combining several of these approaches for stronger protection.
It's definitely good to hear that technical solutions are being developed alongside the technology itself. Okay, final big piece, the regulatory side. How are governments and health authorities keeping up with this incredibly fast-moving tech?
Well, it's definitely a complex and rapidly evolving space. Generally, regulators are treating AI used in healthcare as software as a medical device as SAMD.
Sam and D. Okay.
Right. This acknowledges its software, but also that its core nature, especially with machine learning, is different. It can learn, it can potentially change over time as it sees new data.
So it doesn't fit neatly into the old boxes designed for, say, a physical pacemaker or a static piece of software.
Exactly. That's the challenge. And there isn't one single global authority setting the rules for everyone, which adds another layer of complexity. Though international groups like the IMDRF and the WHO are working on trying to align approaches, but, that takes time. Often, countries, especially lower and middle income ones, look to the big players like the FDA in the US, the EMA in Europe, or the MHRA in the UK for guidance.
Are there common themes emerging in how regulators are approaching AI medical devices?
Yes, definitely. A risk-based approach is pretty standard. The more potential risk to patient safety, the higher the level of scrutiny.
Makes sense.
Many AI tools might fall into moderate risk categories like Class 2 in the US system, though some upcoming rules like the EU's AI Act might classify critical AI uses in healthcare as high risk. Transparency and traceability are also key. Developers have to be open about how the AI was built and tested and track how it performs out in the real world.
And it sounds like it's not just about getting that initial approval, but ensuring ongoing safety.
Absolutely. There's a big emphasis on a total product lifecycle view. You need to balance encouraging innovation with really robust patient protection throughout the AI's lifespan.
And data privacy.
Non-negotiable. Safeguarding personal information, giving patients control, regulating data use, all crucial for building public trust. And unlike a static device, there's a heavy focus on continuous monitoring pre-market and post-market surveillance because the AI might perform differently in the real world compared to its training data.
Are regulators specifically tackling those AI unique challenges we talked about earlier, like potential bias or the fact that these models might not work equally well everywhere?
Yes, they are actively working on that. They're developing frameworks and testing tools to help developers address and mitigate potential issues related to the data used for training.
Like encouraging more inclusive data sets.
Exactly. And promoting fairness checks. There's also work on guidance for human factors, basically, how clinicians and AI systems can best work together safely and effectively. Plus, standards bodies like ISO are developing specific standards for AI terminology, bias, trustworthiness, which regulators can then point to.
What kind of advice are developers getting to help them navigate all this?
Well, key principles include following good machine learning practices, things like using representative data, really thinking about the human-AI team interaction, and having solid plans for monitoring performance over time.
Right.
One interesting approach mentioned is using predetermined change control plans.
What's that?
It basically allows developers to map out and get regulatory agreement on anticipated future changes to their AI algorithms as they learn from new data. It brings some structure to that inherent learning capability.
So they can plan for how the AI might evolve within limits.
Exactly. It's crucial for models designed to keep improving. The overall guidance also stresses transparency, talking to regulators early and often, keeping meticulous documentation, and ensuring data quality, privacy, and importantly, interpretability, understanding why the AI makes a certain recommendation.
Looking ahead then, what's the broader picture for regulating AI in health?
There's ongoing effort to push for more international harmonization to help support countries that maybe don't have extensive regulatory resources yet, and exploring new ideas like regulatory sandboxes, controlled environments where developers can test new AI innovations safely. There's also talk about creating shared AI training databanks specifically curated to be diverse and inclusive.
It sounds like a constant balancing act.
It really is. It reflects that inherent tension between wanting to innovate rapidly because the potential benefits are huge and the absolute need to ensure safety, build trust, and make sure these powerful tools are equitable for everyone.
We have certainly covered a huge amount of ground in this deep dive.
We really have. It's clear AI isn't just some far-off future idea anymore. It's actively here, reshaping medical research, speeding up drug discovery, making diagnosis sharper, and enabling a kind of personalized care we couldn't really do before.
But unlocking all that potential, as we've discussed, means we have to grapple with the complexities. Protecting patient privacy, tackling bias in data and algorithms, navigating this evolving regulatory world. These aren't roadblocks, they're actually essential steps.
Absolutely. They're essential for building trust and making sure this technology actually benefits all of us. Balancing that speed of innovation with the core needs of safety, transparency, and fairness, that's the critical task ahead.
So as you, our listener, think about everything we've talked through today, maybe consider this.
Yeah.
How might AI touch your health journey in the coming years? Could it be in interpreting a scan you have, guiding a treatment choice, maybe even using your anonymized data for research? And if it does, what questions might feel important for you to ask? Questions about its reliability, about how your information is being kept safe, and about how we ensure these incredibly powerful tools ultimately serve everyone fairly. Something to think about.